Hello, everyone. I'm Oracle Oriah, and this is Stephen Mehler, my special guest. I'm so happy that you have been joining me every week, or at least we've been trying to get to every week. We have been taking apart and dissecting his works, his books that he is going to go over. And he is an expert chematologist. He's one of the original founders with Hasim, who is
Hakim.
Hakim. I keep forgetting I mix it with Nassim. Hakim. Definitely don't do that. So
No.
Hakim is the original wisdom teacher that has introduced and guided Stephen through this process and has opened his eyes. And personally, to everyone watching, I see Stephen as a wisdom teacher. And to me, he is passing on the light. And I feel so honored that I get to be a part of it. And I'm learning so much. And we're learning about really the history of civilization and how we all created ourselves and the patterns and everything that we have done to this day and how it impacts and affects us today. So we're going to let him pick up where he left off. So Stephen, thank you very much.
Thank you, honey. Yeah, what I want to let people know, first to apologize a little bit for the last time, is that we had a glitch and we had to restart. And so we had missed the beginning. And I fell into it and made some errors, which we're going to correct. Because we're talking about my second book, From Light into Darkness. And I'm supposed to start by producing the general theme of the work. And we went into it without even discussing that. What is unique about this book is I am making a difference between the two terms, spirituality and religion. And we contend academia doesn't see a difference. That's how I start out the book. Academia sees us as being hardwired for religion, that we've always had some type of religion. So what I had to do was redefine the terms. And this maybe will clear up some confusion from those who listened last time. And maybe they'll go back after hearing this. But we set up a pattern. There is a difference between spirituality and religion. In fact, academia cannot even decide on a general definition of religion. In each academic discipline, say, cultural anthropology, psychology, sociology, and comparative religion, they all define religion differently. And they all base it from a different root. Now, Hakim and I, we looked at it, and we looked at the Latin word religare, and we believe that is the root of the word religion. And what does it mean? It means to bind back together. So Hakim would always say, that means it's saying that before this institution of religion, we were not together and we needed something to bring us together. Wrong. So then we define spirituality and religion. Spirituality. Now, spirituality comes from when humans first became self-aware. And this leads to a question that your husband has been asking people. And he just left, I know, but he's going to want to hear this. Because when we became self-aware, there are the questions. Who am I? What am I? And where did I come from? Every human being who's reached some degree of awareness has had to ask those questions. And that developed into an understanding that there is an essence that pervades all things, organic, inorganic, what we call alive and not alive. And we call it spirit. And this comes to where we started our discussion last time, the beginning of early shamanism. Now, this can go back even further than I said last time, because it's no doubt that Neanderthal, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, 150,000 years ago, was self-aware. They buried their dead. They put flowers on the dead. They did with ochre paint, and they painted the dead. Wow. So they were aware of life, death, cycles. So we could say shamanism goes back 150,000 years at least. So these early shamans became aware that this essence, spirit, pervades all things. And they could connect with that essence. They did that's what we call by using sympathetic magic. By putting on the skins of the animals they hunted, they would connect with the spirit of those animals and ask their permission to take them. And they also would provide for the herds. They would make sure that they were fed and protect them from other predators. So there was an arrangement that was formed. It wasn't just killing and eating. No. And this is what indigenous people and Native American peoples do that today.
No, I don't think a lot of people know that. It changes the way we see our history. So we
exactly.
Don't come from.
So spirituality, once we became self-aware, yes, we're hardwired for spirituality. But then I define religion very specifically. Religion is a series of practices, belief, and rituals, usually always based on writings or a sacred text with specific proscribed rituals and procedures and rules of behavior. So it is clear from the definition that we're saying religion did not exist before writing, before a written text, a sacred text which gives you the rules to live. So that is how religion comes to be, and we traced it from the shamans who came down the cataclysmic event which happened, the Vela supernova, which people can Google, between 14,000 and 11,000 years ago, shook us out of the state of enlightenment. People realized that there could be invaders coming from space, whether they're extraterrestrials or meteorites, doesn't make a difference, and they had to prepare for that. So they developed different systems, settled agriculture, settled occupation, weren't nomadic anymore, became settled, and developed astrology, astronomy, to predict what's coming from the heavens, and developed writing, because the senses were waning. Only these shamans, who later became what we called the Hanuti, the funerary priests. So there's where we come to the definition. Religion is the business that is based on spirituality. And what is the first business? Death. Mm-hmm. They devised the whole system by going to, like we say, the food-producing people and saying, you know what happens to this? No, we don't care what happens to this. We had no concept. There was no word for death in their language at all. Westing, going to the West, changing form. So I said, well, we'll take care of it for you. We'll prepare the body, etc. So people used to ask us, ask Hakim and I, did the ancient Khamishans believe in reincarnation like they do in India? And we'd say no. They believed in resurrection. There's the difference. Hakim would teach. In Africa was taught resurrection. In India, in the West, in East, was taught reincarnation. Why? Because in India, if you think of the climate, you can't preserve the body. Mm-hmm. As Hakim would say, you put it in the ground and it becomes stinky. He would say, no. So what they do, they burn the body. They would say that the body's not necessary. But we will prepare for you that you can come back to a new body. You will reincarnate. That was their religion. Africa, no, the environment became desert-like. It became okay to preserve the body. They developed a technique of mummification. They say, no, you will come back to the same body because we will preserve it. We will take care of it. We will do prayers for it for generations and generations. So that is resurrection. That is the difference. They did not teach reincarnation, resurrection, and Jesus taught resurrection. What is the whole story of Jesus? He was resurrected. No. But this was an ancient concept. It was not new to Christianity. Mm-hmm. So we then showed how it led to Judaism, the religion of Amun. When we come to around 2000 BCE, we enter the astrological age of Aries, the ram, and the age of Amun, the hidden. So originally, Amun had no image, was not to be portrayed in its original conception. But here we're now moving into patriarchal times. Patriarchy is being invented. So they came up with an image. And what was the image? They took the ram, which was originally a Ra of the older teachings. It's the age of Aries, the age of Ra, and it's going to be the age of the ram, and it's going to be the age of Amun. So the ram was the first symbol of Amun. But that wasn't enough. As the people degenerated more, moved more into what we call the New Kingdom period, circa 1500 BCE, patriarchy is all around them. All the other peoples in their civilizations have images of their god. So they gave Amun an image and they made him a man wearing a particular headdress, heron feathers. And so he's no longer hidden. It's still the age of hidden, where information is going to be hidden as separation, but now they give him an image because they're being imitated by other patriarchal religions. So as we indicated, the religion that becomes Judaism, the original Hebrews were 12 tribes of ancient 42 Khamishans. They were Africans. There's books that I can mention. I mentioned in my book a book by a man named Jeffrey Greenberg called The African Origin of the Jewish People. It's actually, I would put it, the African origin of the Hebrew people. Because we said, the word Hebrew, Egyptologists say it means from the Phoenician word habiru or apiru, which means foreigners. Hakim rejected that. I reject it. The Hebrew word itself first appears in Genesis when Abraham himself crosses the Jordan River to come into to Canaan. So they call him Il Ivri, the Hebrew, saying it meant to cross over. And that's what Judaism thinks the word Hebrew comes from. But it's no. As Hakim taught, it's from the word cheperu. Cheper, the scarab beetle, the first stage. The plural is cheperu, Hebrew, cheperu. They were the people from the dawn of time. So the original Hebrews were 12 tribes of Khemetologist. So we came to the Exodus story because that's important. And I blew it. So that's why I'm apologizing to everyone. I talked about Joseph being in Egypt, but I never said how he got there. I left out one of the most important parts of the story. Everybody that reads the Bible, that reads Exodus, remembers the coat of many colors. Again, Jacob had many sons, 12 sons. Those 12 sons became supposedly 12 sons because Jacob, with a story that's told in the Bible, he wrestles with an angel. Some people even say he wrestled with God. It's hard to imagine a human being wrestling with God. So the story becomes he wrestles with an angel who's a representative of God. And so Yisrael, he's called Israel, the one who struggles with God. So he's the son. The 12 sons of Israel are the 12 tribes of Israel. So his favorite wife, he had many wives. Again, patriarchal Judaism, you're allowed to take many wives. Never happened in Kemet. Impossible. You wouldn't take more than one wife. There's no such thing. So this becomes an aspect of Judaism. That you have a harem, you have many wives. So his favorite wife was Rachel. Rachel gave him his two youngest sons, Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph was his favorite. He loved Joseph so much, he gave him this wonderful coat of many colors. But here's the key to the story, which I left out last time. His brothers were jealous of him. Jealous because his father favored him. And they plotted to do away with him. I thought, well, we can't kill our own brother. So they sell him to a caravan that's going to Egypt. And he's to be put into slavery. And it actually mentions that the first time in the Torah that the slavery is mentioned, and it's mentioned in terms of Kemet. So here's where you have pure Jewish mythology. There was no slavery in Kemet, not until Persian, Greek, Roman times. So this is a made-up story again to justify the Hebrews, Jews being different. Okay, so then they kill an animal, they take the coat, dip it in the blood of the animal, and they take it to the father Jacob. Oh my God, he was killed by an animal, we've lost our brother. Oh, he mourns, he mourns, he mourns. It's terrible. So the story continues. Joseph is sold into a family in Egypt, a wealthy family. He's to be a servant, not a slave, but a servant to this family. And the wife attempts to seduce him. He rejects her. So the story, again, this is pure Jewish mythology, is that she then cries rape, and he's thrown in jail. There was no such thing as rape in ancient Kemet. We will discuss this in more detail when we get to your favorite subject. We're going to, after this, we're going to go into full-bore history of sexuality.
I can't wait.
There was no rape in Kemet. It would be unheard of. To rape a woman would be to rape your mother or your daughter. Impossible to think. Rape is a function of patriarchy. So is slavery. We go on. He's sold. They send him into jail. In jail, he meets the wine steward, who's been thrown in jail by the king because he did something wrong. Joseph interprets everybody's dreams in jail. He's known as a great interpreter of dreams. Okay, the wine steward gets out. He goes back to the court. As it says, of course, in Torah, the Pharaoh is having these bad dreams. He cannot sleep these dreams. He brings all his courtiers. I said this last time. I'm just repeating it. They can't interpret the dream. But the wine steward says, hey, there was this guy in prison. He was really good with dreams. Bring him. They bring Joseph to the court. Oh, Almighty King, your dream is easy to interpret. There's going to be 7 years of plenty. But it's going to be followed by 7 years of utter famine in the whole area. Listen to me. In those 7 years of plenty, store grain, store food, and you will be prepared for the famine. And they did. And it happened. So the king then, according to this Jewish mythology, takes this Jewish boy, this Hebrew, and makes him vizier, second in charge. And so he takes charge of the famine and rules. So here we go back to Canaan. It's famine. Everybody's starving. The sons come to Jacob and said, Egypt has plenty of food. If we go with goods and exchange, we go to Egypt, we'll get some food. Jacob says, go. But take with you my favorite son now that's left to me, Benjamin. They do. I told you the story. They don't recognize Joseph. His brothers don't even recognize him as vizier. And so he plays the trick on him. He puts gold in Benjamin's sack, Benjamin is caught. They bring him back. We're going to, oh, please, Joseph. They beg him. They fall on their knees. Don't kill our beloved son, our father. He takes off his disguise and he shows he's their brother. And they're blown out. And so he tells them, get my father, bring the family, bring him into Egypt. Plenty here. And this is the Jewish justification for the Jews, the Hebrews being in Egypt. Not that they were originally there as indigenous Commission people, which they were. They come in as Semites, they come into Egypt, and they're immediately put into slavery for 400 years, which is total nonsense. But it's amazing, as we mentioned, how African slaves identified with that. Because in the middle 18th century, when some African slaves were taught to read, and they read the Bible, they really identified with Exodus.
Right.
Here were the Jews, slaves, crying out to God, help us hear our prayer. God answers their prayer and delivers them. So as we mentioned, every Negro spiritual is based on the Old Testament, is based on Exodus. Moses, go down Moses, let my people go, blah, 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 blah. It's all based on a mythology. The Africans were actual slaves. The Hebrews were not. But there is justification. As we mentioned, we talked about Amenhotep IV, born with that title, has a spiritual reformation when he's a child, changes his title to Ach-en-Aten, the shade or the shadow of the wiser. Meaning I'm a reflection of enlightenment. I say we return to the previous age, the age of Aten, where we were all enlightened, where everybody can have access to the divine. You don't need a priest. You don't need an intermediary. Well, all the Amun priests then became Aten priests. All the others were out of a job. So they hated him and they plotted against him. It's pretty likely, no definite proof is, but it's pretty likely that he was murdered and Nefertiti, his mother, his wife was murdered, his consort was. And here's another way, how Hakim was different. Nefertiti is translated by the Egyptologists, Nefer as being beauty. The beautiful one has come. The beautiful one has arrived. Hakim said, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. It is subjective. What's beautiful to me may be ugly to you. What's beautiful to you may be ugly to me. He said Nefer did not mean beauty. It meant harmony. Harmony is objective. Whatever gives you harmony is true for everyone. And he said the Kita, the name is the last Titi in her title, because it is still an Egyptian word today. And this is how he was so brilliant, how he would show me how Commission words have come down. And I'm going to give you another one. Commission words have come down and they're still present today, even in English, which I'm going to say. But in Arabic, in Egyptian Arabic, there are many Commission words. Titi means walking, steps. It's your first, he would say, they often talk about the child has his first titi, first steps. So what does it mean? She walks in harmony. Much more beautiful, much more profound than the beautiful one has come.
Wow.
Beauty fades. Beauty fades. I mean, I've seen a lot of 90-year-old women who I still think are beautiful, but we tend to be youth-oriented. We're only beautiful in our 20s and 30s, and then we get old and we fade away and blah, 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 blah. But, oh no, she walks in harmony is forever. That's her title. Here's another one, which is so beautiful, how he does. That's why I love to tell you Hakim's stories. I'm sitting with him. This is around 2004. The Iraq War is going on. And I'm talking, we're very political. Again, there was no discussion between Hakim and I that was taboo. So we're talking about the war. And I'm talking, saying, Bush and Cheney and the Republicans and the Taliban, I said, we're all in cahoots. Hakim stopped me. Stephen, do you know the origin of this word? Cahoots. I said, no. It's an English word. He said, no, it's not an English word. Where does it come from? The dictionary doesn't know. He said the word is kahanut. It means to be in alignment with the Hanuti, with the priests, with religion, to be a fundamentalist, in other words. So that's where the word comes from. When we're in cahoots with somebody, it's with kahanut. And see, we redefine Hanuti today. The original definition of Hanuti is funerary priests, the first priests. And we say how the temple was evolved and how religion came to be on death, on mummification. But We define Hanuti today as anyone who exploits or uses the life of another for their own selfish ends. So that's all our politicians, that's all our leaders, that's the Hanut.
Wow.
So Kahanut, an English word, cahoots, is from an ancient Commission word. So Akhenaten is plotted against. So what Hakim was always adamant about is that the Exodus, as it is in Judaism, was an actual historical event, not a mythological. There are even Jewish scholars who believe the event never happened. It's just a story told to justify the origin of the Jewish people. No. He would always say what the Exodus was the Amun priests who came back to power chasing the followers of Akhenaten, the Atenites, out of Egypt. They would have called themselves the Sexuality. When they meet 40 years in the desert, they combine, I told you, a coalition is formed with Semitic tribes who follow El, others who follow Yahweh. They're following Aten. They combine it together and they become the Israelites, the slaves and servants of El. But they're not just worshiping El, because what they're saying is, Aten, in this prayer, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, what they're actually saying is, Aten, Yahweh, and El are all the same God. And we put it one further, like we said, Allah and all of them, Yahweh, Jehovah, are all Amen. It's all the same religion. So here's what I wanted to come back to, because I wanted to show that there's so much similarities in Judaism. Now, as I say in my book, to do a complete exposition of the history of Judaism would have involved 4 or 5 volumes in itself, much longer than we have time to discuss. So all I did in the book was show the Commission origin of Judaism, which is the Mosaic tradition. What we said was Akhenaten had 2 viziers. Viziers were like prime ministers based on a Turkish word, wazir. It actually was the man who was the second in charge to the Sultan, was somebody who was first in all languages, all religions. Archaeology would show people sites. The dragoman. Hakim was a dragoman. So the vizier was named Ramisu, which in English would be Ramos, or Ramses. That's the name Ramses. Still the same. Ramisu. Now I have to tell you what Misu means because it's the origin of Moses. Moses, where does the name come from? Jewish scholars fight and argue and debate. Where does Moses come from? Very simply, Sigmund Freud had it right when he wrote his book, Moses and Monotheism. Moses is a Greek ending of most of the Commission terms, like Ramses in Greek would be Ramoses. There's Kamoses, Amoses, all many different titles had Moses. Mose is Misu. It's incorrectly translated in Egyptology as child. It could be son of, daughter of, as a child. Well, Hakim said that's not correct because Ach was child, and I'll explain why. Because Akhenaten. Misu means the one who has defeated death, the resurrected one. It becomes in Hebrew Messiah, Messiah. What was Jesus called? The Messiah. What happens to him? He comes down off the cross, supposedly. Or he comes out of the cave. He never died on the cross. I told that story. There's a good book, Fida Hasnain, I'll send you the title, Jesus Lived in India, that shows that Jesus just lost consciousness on the cross. This was one of the teachings of the Rosicrucians. He went on and lived his life in India, lived 120 years old, and is buried in Srinagar. But it meant the one who has defeated death, Misu. And there's a particular glyph. And I could show you, I'll send you that glyph. I have a picture of Hakim pointing to it. It's 3 jackal skins. In Kemet, in this desert society, the jackal was the enemy of the dead. Because when they found out, when they started this idea of this, the body being important, and they buried it, the jackal would dig it up and eat it. It's called the eater of the dead, the jackal. So this is why they came up with the idea of putting a granite slab, which is called mastaba, in Egypt means bench, and then supposedly evolved into the tomb. Not to the pyramid, as we said, but to the tomb, to protect the body from the jackal. So what does this mean? This is a curse. The 3 jackal skins, Misu, is actually a curse. It is saying 3 times, the jackal is dead, the jackal is dead, the jackal is dead. It means you can't eat my body. That's the origin of resurrection, to prevent the jackal from eating the body. So, the vizier's name was Ra-Misu. Ramses, in Greek, it would have been Ra-Moses. That's where Moses comes from. So, again, we disagreed with Ahmed Asman and other authors who have argued that Akhenaten was Moses. They were the same person. We differ. We say, oh, no. A lot of the, I mentioned to you, one of Sigmund Freud's students was named Otto Rank, R-A-N-K. A lot of psychology students are probably, or psychiatry students are eagerly listening to this. Rank, his whole thesis was the myth of the great man, and that he proposed that the great people we have in history, men, of course, it's patriarchy, like Jesus, like Moses, like Muhammad, etc., are actually more than one living person whose life has been fused into the myth. And clearly, that's true about Moses. Because if you read Exodus, you realize that they're talking about 2 totally different people. A Hebrew priest who was Moses, then the second half, he goes to Midian when he's chased out of Egypt, supposedly for killing a Hebrew, killing an Egyptian who was beating a Hebrew. It becomes in Midian, and a different one marries a woman by a sheikh named Jethro, etc., etc. It's obvious they're talking about a whole other person. 2 people fused together to be Moses. So yes, the life of Akhenaten was fused into the myth of Moses with Ramesses. So yes, but he was Moses because he left Kemet with the Kemetian priests, with the Kemetian followers, with the Atan followers, who again would have called themselves Sexuality. So why it took 40 days is they had to combine. So here's an interesting thing, the praying. This is what I wanted to get to. Because I told you this is why I wanted to do this today. We're at an important date right now. Really? You mentioned the dark moon and Hecate coming to you. Well, of course. It's the dark moon because it's the Jewish New Year. We are today in what's called Erev Rosh Hashana, or Erev Yontif. We are in the eve of the new year of Judaism. The next 10 days are the holiest days of Judaism. Culminates with Yom Kippur, which I'm going to talk to you about on the 8th of October. But tonight starts Rosh Hashana, the highest, holiest days. So, and what is it? The calendar we're going into is the year 5781, the origin of the Jewish calendar. Well, interesting. The Kemetian calendar is said to be 6241, just a couple of 100 years earlier. The Kemetian calendar, which is based on the movement of Sirius, Sa Ptah, the birthplace of Ptah. The Kemetians believed Sirius was a father star to them, that their ancestors did come from Sirius. Again, the extraterrestrial, there it is. So they're saying that. So that's why Ptah is a father-creator principle. Sa Ptah. So that's what they call the Sothis calendar, which the Greeks called Sothis or Sirius. No, it's based on that. And so really what the calendars are dating, the Jewish calendar today, 5781 tomorrow, Kemetian calendar 6241 is the beginning of patriarchy. Because patriarchy is when they define mother, father, home, birth, and they start writing and dating a calendar, having to know. Kemetians didn't have calendars. I used to love this. Movies are always great at bringing these in. There's a great Australian movie called Where the Green Ants Dream. And it's by the great German director. He'll come to me. But anyway, it shows Aboriginal wisdom. So the Aboriginals didn't have numbers. They didn't count. If something, they would say something is, if they're talking about distance, something is far, farther, and farthest. If you're talking about time, something is early, earlier, and earliest. So they didn't have dating. The Kemetians were the same way before calendars. It just was, that was then, this is now. And only basically in their teachings, the now is the most important. So the calendar starts dating with the past, present, the future. That's patriarchy. That's a symbol of patriarchy. You've always asked me where are the moments that we went astray. And I point out certain additions to you. It's also when you start, Hakeem would ask me, Stephen, look in the dictionary up the words wife, husband, brother, sister. They're all based on Anglo-Saxon or Latin words, not any words either than that. He would say there were no words in the Khemetologist language. Again, the only relationship that was recognized was mother and child. And the child was the Ach, A-K-H, the shadow of the mama.
There's something very freeing about that. If I only saw myself as a mother and having children, it changes my dynamic with how I see everything else around me.
And your daughters are your shadows.
Mm-hmm.
They are your shadows. Now, Judaism, people don't know. Even Judaic scholars don't talk about this. Two forms of Judaism. The original Judaism as formed before Christianity is what's called Temple Judaism. Mm-hmm. And it practiced animal sacrifice. Same thing the Khemetologists did. So in other words, what was Temple Judaism was really the image of Amun. They had image of Amun, they had the image of God, they had this. And this was one of the things that turned me off to Judaism as a child. I used to read in English that it would say that the smell of burnt flesh was pleasing to the nose of God. It's animal sacrifice. This is ancient Judaism. Same thing, they did this in Kemet. And I could never understand how burning an animal is pleasing to God, killing. Then I saw what was Judaism was just saying everything that exists is for our. I often have said, the worst thing Jews have done to themselves is this term, the chosen people. Mm-hmm. The chosen people is the basis of anti-Semitism. By saying we're chosen, all non-Jews are not, we're favored by God, others aren't, that's a good reason to be hated. Mm-hmm. And it's a good reason why Jews have been hated for 2,000 years, especially by Christians. Okay. Temple Judaism, I have not researched it enough to say, but I believe they would have worshipped 5 times a day. We talked about the 5 stages of the sun. Cheper, dawn. Ra, noon. Un, early afternoon. Atan, late afternoon. Amen, night. 5 stages. The Khemetologist would have prayed 5 times a day, corresponding to those time frames. Judaism probably adopted that whole cloth 5 times a day. However, once Christianity comes in and Judaism changes to what's called rabbinical Judaism, which is what is practiced today, rabbis, they outlawed animal sacrifice. They outlawed a lot of the ideas that they had gotten and wanted to be more like the Christians. And so they adopted. So they changed and prayed 3 times a day, which is what Jews do today, except on Friday, the Shabbos, the Sabbath, they pray 4 times a day. But why I said it was important to do this now, October 8th is Yom Kippur, the holiest day in Judaism, the Day of Atonement, where every Jew is supposed to fast for 24 hours, no food, no drink, and pray to God to give forgiveness for all the sins that have been committed against your fellow man. Not against God, but against your fellow man. And supposedly the fasting covers that.
Can you repeat that again, what it means? I want to hear it.
The Day of Atonement. Yom Kippur.
And what's
the day? The Day of Atonement. We're supposed to pray all day to be forgiven from our sins committed against other humans.
Interesting. Okay, got it.
Yeah, the Muslims come along. They're the latest, but they're more like the ancient Khemetologists. Muslims pray 5 times. Oh, I had to repeat this. On Yom Kippur, the only day Jews pray 5 times a day. 2 extra services on Yom Kippur, which is from ancient Kemet. The Muslims have got it right. They pray 5 times a day, but they've got it all wrong because the times they pray do not correspond to the 5 stages of the sun at all. They pray in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. What sign is that? They pray at all different, And again, as I told the story, I want to repeat the story. Hakim was raised as a Muslim, like everybody in Egypt is. In Egypt, you only have 2 religions that you can claim. You're either Muslim or you're Christian. There's no other. There's no atheist. There's no Buddhist. You're either Christian or you're Muslim. So on his passport, it says he's Muslim. He started out as a Muslim. I told the story. 15 years old. He goes into the mosque, and the imams, they're all up at the altar, and they're arguing what time is supposed to be. 8:37. No, 8:38. No, 8:34. And they're arguing. The time for prayer goes by. Hakim is outraged. He goes up there and says, here you are arguing about the time to prayer, and the time to prayer is past. And they go, well, that was the last time he ever entered a mosque. That was the end of him being a Muslim. Okay.
That's a good story.
So there's a lot more, but I want to skip. I talk about how Akhenaten was, of course, connected to Judaism, which is what we did, but to the Rosicrucian teachings, too. Because I mentioned when I first got interested in the Rosicrucians in San Jose, California, I went to Rosicrucian Park, and there was images of Akhenaten everywhere. And I said, what? The standard belief is the Rosicrucians began in the Middle Ages as a European mystery school. No, the Rosicrucians would say Akhenaten was the first traditional Grand Master.
Wow.
So quickly, they tell a story. Akhenaten's great-great-grandfather was titled Thutmose III. He's considered the greatest warrior king in the history of Kemet, of Egypt. He extended the empire far to the east, far to what it ever had been. He was known as the warrior king. There's a story about him taking over his aunt Hatshepsut, but we'll do that another time. But what the Rosicrucians teach is a story that's not taught in Egyptology. That when he becomes an older man, Thutmose III had a spiritual reformation. And he decided to develop teachings in the temples. He developed what we call the Purwur, the universities, where in the temples they would have teachings. And they became the basis of what would become the Rosicrucian order. So then it said his great-great-grandson, Amenhotep IV, Akhenaten, carried on what his ancestor had started and developed formal set of initiations and teachings which became the basis of the Rosicrucian order. And so he's considered the traditional Grand Master.
Wow.
But what I wanted to get to, and we'll spend the rest of the time on this, because I had to bring it, you haven't read the book yet, because you'd know what I would be leading to.
It's been a crazy 2 weeks.
I start with the front with something and say I'm going to give Hakim's true Commission teachings, which are pre-dynastic, before writing. But I have to present it at the end of the book, going through everything else, because I call it the 5 pillars of Commission wisdom. Again, it comes down to 5. He gave me the first immediately when I met him in 1997. There is no death. There was no word in the Commission language for death. It's only resting, changing form. They did not believe life and death a dichotomy. It was all life. What we call death is just changing form. Okay? Then I came back in 97, where we did the teachings that led to my first book, The Land of Osiris, and he gave me the second one. There is no time. Commission didn't believe in time. Time is an illusion, he would say. It's only a function of distance. He would say to the ancients, same thing Buddha taught, same thing all the great masters have taught, there is only the eternal now.
Right.
Everything that's in the past, everything that's to come is all in this moment.
That's right.
So then I said, oh, he was teaching like the Buddha. So then when I came back in 2004, is when he launched into the teachings that became this book, From Light. He gave me the third one. And the third one is, there is no separation.
Right.
Everything is connected to everything else.
Right.
Every cause is an effect. Every effect is a cause. So from there, he launched into the 2 most powerful and the most difficult to understand. There is no God and there is no soul. Boom. Immediately, I know a lot of your people have fallen off their chairs. What? There is no soul? I do soul retrieval. I work with people, bringing back their soul. Right. No, what I noticed, this is very much like the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught the ego is an illusion. There is no I. And as I put in my book, you'll see it, a quote from Satya Sai Baba. He used the term Jivatma, the Sanskrit term for soul. He said there are not billions of Jivatmas. There's only one. We're all reflections of the one. And this is what Hakim was saying. But it's so important. There is no God, in that he was saying there is no personality. There is no being. There cannot possibly, if the third one is true,
That's correct.
There is no separation. There cannot be a creator separate from creation.
Absolutely.
Creation and the creator are the same.
That's right.
Mother Nature is God as much as Yahweh and Jehovah and Allah are God.
That's correct.
Okay?
Right.
So no separation. So what he was saying is, the nectars are not gods and goddesses, have we contended. They are aspects of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
There is only one unifying principle. And they used it, the Commissions, as what I call the triple netter. When the netter appears 3 times, netter, netteru, means the netter of the netters. It means all 360 combined. That's the only time they were talking about God. All the principles, but it's consciousness. That's why he started this 3rd book with me by saying the first sign would be Zim, 2 hooks, consciousness. He's saying God is consciousness. That's all it is, and it's everything there is. There is nothing else. And there is no beginning, there is no end. It is just interminable cycles over and over again. We've done this all before. We've gone through these pandemics before.
Feels
We've gone through these.
Everything feels very repetitive.
So this is the Commission wisdom. And this is the basis that was the spirituality that became sold as business to make religion. To say that only we, the priests, the Hanuti, only we can be the intermediaries. The Pope, the rabbis, the imams, the ayatollahs, only they have direct access to God. Well, this is basically the same thing Muhammad was saying. I got direct transmission from Allah. I give it to my disciple, Abu Bakr. He gives it to his disciple, Uthman Osran, and he writes the Quran. It's not direct. It never came. The ones who received the transmissions never wrote anything down. We call it the 5 books of Moses. He didn't write anything. Jesus didn't write anything down. It was supposedly the disciples that got the transmissions of Jesus. Again, the game telephone. You start at the beginning, you go to the end. It has nothing. That's why Christianity has very little to do with what Jesus taught. Judaism has very little to do with what Akhenaten taught. Islam has very little to do with Muhammad taught.
Right.
So here we are fighting these wars. And it's again, my God can beat up your God.
Right. Just the word separate, the separation word is the big key factor here. I mean,
and it is the key. It is the key word of this cycle of the last 5,000 years.
And that's the #1 word that I basically live and breathe, that word, because that's how I'm finding my freedom, and that's how I am existing in this timeline. That's how I'm making all my choices, is understanding there's no time and no separation. And as long as I come from there, I've been able to navigate, and you become more interdimensional when you're that way, because you're not in any constructs. So you just feel very alive. You feel very here.
Have to understand the labels, like I said, were put on from birth. Woman, Viking, blonde, Hispanic, all of those things. We have to, Christian, we have to step out of them.
Right.
See them for what they are. And then who's that's left is who we really are.
Right.
And who we are is just like, who we are is just like your husband has been channeling. We are multi-dimensional, multifunctional beings who are here having a physical experience. We are a spirit that has captured a body for a temporary residence, just temporary occupation. The real you is eternal.
And the peace that people are seeking actually comes with that understanding, because when you settle into this knowledge, you're going into your ancient wisdom, and then you're releasing all of this temperamental, fickle behavior that's full of tension and contrasting beliefs, where you're different than me, I'm different than you, I'm not you, we have to be separate. And, you know, it's really just all energetic. And I can't wait for us to go into our other segment when we start.
Well, let's start. Let me give you a few hints. Because when did women's sexuality fall, right? You know, it's the fathers of religion.
Can I ask you I'd like to ask you a very specific question that could launch you. And if obviously you're not going to have enough time on this show, but we can get to the next. So the question I have is, was there ever a time where the female was free to be sexual across the board, wherever and however she wanted?
I just told you, for thousands of years of Kemet.
Okay.
Listen,
and so, because at
think of the words of St. Augustine, right? One of the Christian fathers who wrote that the gates of hell lie between a woman's legs. Do you know that he said that?
No.
Yes, the gates of hell lie between a woman's legs. That's the basis of Christian view of women's female sexuality. While the Commissions would have thought the gates of heaven lie between a woman's legs.
Well,
understand,
even though
even let's do it right now.
Well, because
again,
they
I
look
told
at
you,
hell because they're trapped in their own beliefs about females, so they feel trapped in their own hell in between her legs.
well, it's again, how could patriarchy be established? The only way patriarchy could be established is making female sexuality the devil, the enemy. Creation myth. Let's go to Genesis. He creates Adam, right? Okay. Adam's lonely. Adama, which means from the earth. It's really Atum, Adam, okay? From the earth. He's lonely. I need a companion. Okay, I'll give you a companion. No story. The first story, which only appears in Kabbalah, no longer appears in Genesis. He creates one being, male and female together, called Adam Kadmon. Splits them in two. They are equal. Okay, here's the patriarchal story. Adam tells her, you're going to be my servant. You're going to lie beneath me. She says, basically, fuck you. Why am I going to lie between you? I'm your equal. So Adam runs back to God. This is in the Kabbalah. I can't deal with her. I can't control her. Okay, we'll get rid of her. She's banished from Eden. We put him asleep, opens up his body, takes the rib supposedly, and Eve is to be subservient, to serve it. So female sexuality then is to serve male sexuality. But what does Lilith, who was the original, her name was Lilith, she becomes a succubus. She becomes a story that's told in Kabbalah of the demoness who appears to men when they have nocturnal emissions in their dreams, and they spewed a little bit of sperm, of semen, she grabs it, and she makes demons. Dig, you understand what I'm saying? Judaism is saying that female sexuality is the devil creating demons. That's where it comes from. That's where it starts. Christianity just follows through. I mean, make her a virgin. She doesn't even have sex. The mother of Jesus. Not even sex. I mean, and then Allah, I mean, the Kabbalah, I mean, the Quran says it's okay for a husband to rape his wife. So where does it start? It starts the very stage when they had to make, again, when J.J. Bachhoven saw that the Romans had all these laws, he said there had to be another system before that these laws were in response to. Yeah, inheritance, primacy, who's the boss, who's the ruler. So that means all the time in ancient Kemet, a woman was free. As I told you, there was no word for marriage. They chose a male because they decided he had the characteristics. If they wanted to have a child, they knew the process. They knew about genetics. They knew what happens with the sperm and the egg. They knew that man gives half to the woman. Women knew that way before men knew that. And so they would choose a man for the qualities they wanted to have a child.
So
but then he was not in the picture anymore.
Was
the
there
child was
in that time period?
Was there what?
Marriage.
Not the way we called it. No, there was consorting, yes, but not marriage. There was no word for marriage in their language. There was again. Once it starts again, when you study Egyptology, you study 4,000 years of creeping patriarchy. Starts out matriarchal. Matrilineality is till the end, till Cleopatra VII, till the Romans come in and conquer the Egyptians and make them patriarchal, and then they turn to Christianity, to Coptic Christianity. It's still mother descent, mother to daughter. But the men are becoming more and more important, more and more taking over, more and more changing the mythology. The Sphinx becomes masculinized. The males become more important. Amun becomes the king of the gods, etc., etc. But it is always told by others, by Greek historians, Roman historians, that the Egyptian women had freedom that no other women on earth had. They consorted with whoever they wanted. I told you. And we'll go into more detail next time. There is this papyrus that's in the church in Turin, Italy, where the shroud of Jesus Turin is there. That's what's known as the erotic papyrus of Turin, which they found in one of the temples of Hathor, which is basically a Shunga scroll, a Kama Sutra, which was a training text for the priestesses of different forms of sexuality. And it shows women having sex with animals. It is not symbolic. It is actual. A woman in Kemet, whether pre-dynastic or dynastic, could have sex with whoever, whatever they wanted to. A crocodile, a donkey, didn't make a difference. There was no taboos. The taboos against sexuality come with Judaism. come with patriarchy. Tells you who you can fuck and who you can't fuck, which tribe you can have, which tribe you can't have. Technically, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather and grandmother committed incest because they were first cousins. My father's mother was also a Mehler, like my father, but she had to change her name to Miller because this is taboo in Judaism to even marry your first cousin. But they did it. And he was a very Orthodox Jew. So where does it come from? 5,000 years ago. Before that, women could be with whoever. One quick story before we leave, because we're getting close. Babylon. I used to love to tell this story when I would tell the story of matriarchy. And I think I told the story the first time, but we're going to repeat it now because of its significance. The state god of Babylon was Marduk, the same as Amen, same person. The statue in the square of Babylon showed Marduk with a sword splitting his mother, Tiamat, in two. Now, Tom Van Flatteren, a planetary scientist, says this is actually a myth of an exploding planet that existed between Mars and Earth, and it's the asteroid belt. He could be correct, but it's also an actual story talking about the defeat of matriarchy by patriarchy. Again, it is the son who replaces the mother, not the husband, not the father. Yahweh, Adonai, Allah are all sun gods, S-O-N. Become sun gods, S-U-N. But they're sons of the mother. So what happens? The mother loses her position in Judaism. But all the Orthodox Jews always tell, oh, look how Jews worship the women in the Bible, they're venerable. Yeah, but they're always secondary. It's always then they become secondary status. And you must be married to have children. That's where marriage comes. And you have to marry a male. You have to be heterosexual. Homosexuality is a sin that you will die by stoning. Bisexuality is a sin. Everything that was prevalent in Kemet, which was pansexuality, is now a sin. It's only heterosexuality. It's only a man and a woman. And the woman takes her husband's name. She goes to his tribe. Totally in opposition to what matriarchy was. Totally in opposition. So you want the beginning? You want the beginning? We're going into it tonight. 5781. 5,781 years ago, the Jewish calendar was created. That's the beginning of patriarchy.
So later this evening, Pacific Standard Time, I will make sure this video gets up today so that people can watch it on today's Yom Kippur.
Tomorrow, Rosh Hashana. Yom Kippur will be October 8th.
Okay, Rosh Hashana.
Rosh Hashana, just normal prayer.
Should I post it tomorrow or today?
Tomorrow. Okay. Tomorrow would be perfect.
Okay, great. Next thing I would like to say is that on our next show, what I would like to have you launch into is to explain what is natural human inclination versus traditional programming through patriarchy. Very important, because I think we're going back to our natural state. I think many of us are ready and want to and understand.
We'll even discuss how sexual dimorphism comes. I told you, I started out as a biologist. Evolutionary biology was very key to me. We'll talk about the whole evolution of sexuality itself.
Because I'm going to leave it with this. I've been married 5 times, and people could laugh and say, well, you know, you're just trying to get it right. And like, you know, you're not going to give up. 25 years between the 5 husbands. And I will say that in my experience, being an expert marriage person, I will say that it feels very unnatural. It doesn't feel appropriate to be with one person. I feel that is
that's only in the last. The nuclear family is only a couple of 100 years old.
I think it's the beginning of the end.
We were raised in groups. We were raised in tribes. We were raised either our father's clan or our mother's clan.
Here's the reason
nuclear family.
There's a perceived notion that you are tied by ball and chain and you are stuck with this person, and that's where all hell breaks loose, and that's where all the problems start. And when you have freedom of expression and you don't, and that's why people go into polyamorous, but I want to go deeper than that. I'm not just a Burning Man hippie mentality. I want to go
next time.
The constructs of humanity is where I'm interested in.
And it's involved has to do with drugs, and has to involve with social structures. So that's where we'll go, because it's at least 10,000 years old, this discussion, and it's more than that because it goes back to when did sex really begin? So, I mean, it's easy.
Wow, this is going to be a very hot topic. No kidding. So thank you so much, Stephen. This was an awesome show, and we will be seeing you next week. And thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and make sure you subscribe and like, and we will see you next time. Thank you.